We have a panel today to talk about the future of the workforce and the skills gap. So I'd like to move on to the next slide and introduce our panel members that are going to be with us today. So the person moderating the panel is going to be Ramsey Alwin, and she is the Director of Thought Leadership and Financial Resilience at AARP. Please welcome Ramsey. We have Elizabeth Murthy. She is the Associate Partner at McKinsey & Company. Welcome, Elizabeth. We have Laura Carmack. She's our VP of HR and Assessment and Recruitment, as well as for NS2 and NS2 Serves. Welcome, Laura. And Chris Dinkel is the Managing Director at Deloitte. Welcome, Chris. And last but not least, we have Tom Iler. He's the Chief Product Officer at Catalyte. So welcome to the panel.
Welcome, and thank you for joining us. It's my pleasure to be able to moderate with such a fabulous panel today, a topic that I've been studying for a good while. This fourth industrial revolution is creating a tidal wave of transformation, not just in the US, but around the world. At AARP, nonpartisan, nonprofit, representing our 38 million members, 50 and older, we're thinking about the implications of the driving forces that are changing the future of work. We've really been focused on the twin trends of automation and disruptive technology, as well as aging and longevity. These two megatrends are profoundly and transforming our workforce composition and the future of work itself. And I'm really looking forward to a conversation today where we can dig into the implications for lifelong learning and digital skills. The McKinsey Global Institute's recent analysis of the future of work is just inspiring and amazing to think about. 75 to 375 million jobs around the world will be displaced due to automation. In particular, individuals midlife and mid-career will be displaced due to automation. It's time for us to actively, proactively think about ways that we're going to address this to ensure everyone can make the digitization transition. Ways we can tap into our experienced workforce, prepare our new entries for the new normal that is the future of work and the role that increased longevity and disruptive technologies will play. So today we'll focus in particular on digital skills, and I think it's of note that a CompTIA report recently estimated that there are 700,000 unfilled IT jobs in America. There's truly a war on talent, while there's also a dire need for tech skills. So we have some experts today that can talk a little bit about the ways that they've been addressing through their firms the challenges on how to fill the wage and skill digital divide. If you have questions, feel free to go ahead and use your index cards. There are also standing mics that will be available. We'll open up with a few questions to each of our panelists, and then we'll open it up to the audience toward the end. So Elizabeth, we'll start with you. Your work at McKinsey focuses on working with DoD and the government to understand the technical skills gap in the workforce. So what's more challenging, determining why the gap exists or deciding how to fill it?
Well, neither is easy. I think everyone in this room has seen that, experienced it, lived it. I think that our military in particular is excellent when it comes to solving a how problem when it's become a mission imperative. When we need to get something done, when it is mission critical, there is nothing and no one that can hold us back. I think that translating the why, especially something like digital and technical talent, which is can be a 40,000-foot problem. Translating that down into how is it holding my tactical mission back today is the challenge. And I see that as what senior leaders and day-to-day, what we struggle with. The ability to take your mission and project it over several years and decompose that into the skills that you're going to need to succeed, into the intrinsic capabilities as well as more traditional ways of thinking about skills, thinking about your workforce. It's not something that comes naturally to us, especially in a world where skills are evolving, the way that we assess qualifications, the way that we prepare, and the way that we learn is changing so rapidly from generation to generation. We're not well equipped to do that type of workforce planning. So I think the how, when it comes to actually getting the job done, is something that we're well equipped to do, but translating the why of digital talent into mission value today is something that we're still learning.
Wonderful, thank you. So Laura, you serve as the VP of Recruitment for NS2 Serves, a program that trains post 9/11 veterans and places them in high-tech careers. Can you tell us a little bit more about your work and how you're working to address the digital skills gap?
Sure. So I think a lot of you have heard me before here at NS2 talk about our Veterans Initiative. It started about 6 years ago when our CEO, Mark Testoni, had this great vision. And he came to me and said, Laura, we really need to hire veterans. And I was that HR private sector person that said, hire veterans to do what? What skills would we have? What jobs could we put them in? And so 6 years ago, we decided to start NS2 Serves. We decided to take this training. We take military veterans 0 to 10 years out of the service, and they only have to have a minimum of a high school degree. And some of them actually do have bachelor's degrees and actually even master's degrees. And you would think that would be a great skill set between the military and the degrees, and they should easily get a job. Well, they don't easily get a job, and we've taken some of these veterans that have been, they get out of the military and they think, oh, I have these great skills and I can get a job and I'm going to have this greatest job. And they're out there and they're applying to jobs and they keep applying and they can't find the jobs. And it's the private sector that goes back to them and says, well, you don't have a degree, and so I don't see where you fit. And you can't put their skills that they've learned in the military on the resume. You cannot outline what they've done. And so what we decided to do is all of a sudden we train them. We use our SAP education. We train them for 8 to 10 weeks. And then we give them that SAP certification, which then goes on their resume. And then we work with companies such as Chris Dinkel here at Deloitte, who's going to talk about it, who realize between their military skill set and what we're training them, that they are really good hires. And he found that it's great in hiring early talent folks, but when you train a military person and put them in a job, they are going to stay with that job, and they're going to they want to progress and they want to move, be promoted and stay with the company. Whereas some of the kids coming out of college are looking at the Deloitte for maybe a 1 or 2 year stint and then getting the training and then moving on. So NS2 Serves takes these veterans, we train them, and then it's my job to make sure that they do have employment afterwards. And we've worked with great companies such as Deloitte and Accenture, and those companies realize the value of these hires. And we do this, the veterans do not pay anything. They come from all over the country. We fly them in. We house them at the NCC. We pay for their lodging, their food. And a lot of the military say, this program is too good to be true. What's the catch? Well, there isn't a catch. This is what we do as SAP NS2. This is what we do to give back. All of our employees are invested in what we do, and they all help with the program. They all want to help. We have so many great people. We have our general, John Campbell, who is our chairman, and Frank Larkin, and Adam Rock, who's our managing director, and people within our legal, Dale Terza, and finance, and other in our marketing group that all invest in this program. And so that's the basis of the program. And all I can say is all those companies out there, as you saw, we have 20 veterans here. They're all looking for a job. We had an open house on Monday with several companies. And I'd love for you to come up to me at some point today at the end of this and talk about how you can hire them. Because if you're a company and you're not hiring these veterans, you're missing out on a great hire. So thank you.
What an incredible program. Fabulous. So Chris, tell us, what are some of the key differences you've noticed in the technical skill sets required in today's environment? And is there a shortage of workers that can run and manage the complex information systems and infrastructures you're looking at Deloitte?
Well, absolutely, and we see this across the marketplace. You just referenced the CompTIA survey that was done recently, there's a tremendous dearth of technologically savvy individuals to work in the technological marketplace, and that's across all technologies, not just SAP. What we've found has been very unique about what we've been able to do with the NS2 Serves program is that the degree of exposure that people are getting to the SAP technology makes them extremely viable as we work through our capabilities to deliver to our customers, especially when we talk about these really large SAP programs, many of which are global in nature. So it's not only about the technology, the depth of technology that they bring to the table, but the basic understandings. Many of the folks that do go into the NS2 Serves program actually have experience with SAP programs because of their participation in some of the DoD SAP scenarios. So they bring that knowledge and experience to the table, which helps make for a better candidate overall for us to be able to potentially position with our clients to be able to do the work that we're doing inside of that. And it's one of our alternative approaches to looking for talent. As everyone is probably aware, the marketplace is tight. And as we continue to fight against other competitors in the room for the best talent possible, you have to look beyond the traditional, well, we always looked at, okay, people graduated from college, we may have specific skills, schools that we recruit from with specific skills, but we're having to look beyond that in order to fit the needs that we have given the exponential growth that's been going on in the marketplace.
Great. Well, what a fabulous example of leveraging a talent pool that has those incredibly important, uniquely human skills, critical thinking, collaboration, creativity, with a program that also provides the technical assistance to gain the digital skills as well, which is a good segue to Catalyte. So Tom, at Catalyte, you're focused on filling the skills gap, looking for aptitude as opposed to pedigree. Finding diverse and untapped talent pools that others may not be looking into. So tell us about your approach and how you tap into the aptitude market.
Certainly, and I think the answer to the question of, how do we take this excess demand, even though we have individuals whose jobs are being automated and individuals who are unemployed and would love these types of careers, why is there a fundamental disconnect? And that's at the core of what Catalyte has been working on for about 20 years, which is we believe that ability is rampantly available across the workforce. However, opportunity is not as evenly distributed. So if you look at the hiring practices of the companies that represent the 700,000 jobs, the first things is we require a 4-year degree. So if you think about the cost of college and the availability to the workforce, that immediately eliminates about half of the individuals. Then you'll go to the next requirement, which is we're looking for someone who has experience with the technology. All of a sudden, you take the available pool of individuals and you shrink it to about 10% of the entire group. A friend of mine refers to that as we always go out to the same 5 bars in town. We never try all, in New York, there's thousands of bars, but we always go to the same 5. The labor market, the employers are going to the same small group of individuals, and all they're doing is driving up the wages for those individuals, even though there is a plethora of individuals who have the innate ability to fill these positions. And these individuals will be amazing employees. A lot of times you can source them from within your organization. You invest in them. Your turnover is lower. This is a solution that's right in front of us. And Catalyte has kind of built its business model on top of that. One of the key items is, well, how do you identify whether someone has the ability? And that's where a lot of our technology and a lot of our research has gone in. We have a 2-hour screening tool that anybody can take. You can go to our website. And at the end, we have machine learning algorithms that pick up about 500 pieces of data from that session and gives a probability of success for an individual to enter into one of our technology tracks. From that, based upon that, we actually make the investment in the individuals. We actually train them for free. I'm the proud father of two boys. One just graduated with a computer science degree at College Park, got a wonderful job and everything. And I was sobered because we do an annual survey of all of the individuals who go through our program. And it became very clear that if my son had entered our program on the same day he entered college, he would have had the same or actually better income at 4 years when he graduated from college. And he had 1 A-, everything else was A's, and he got an amazing job in a cybersecurity company. But think about the sobering reality of that. Now, I'm not denying his education. He got a wealth of very broad information that got put into his brain over those 4 years. But the pragmatic reality is, in his job, he's applying this much. He's actually focused on a very small portion. I asked him, I said, how many of your courses were really, really relevant to what you did? He said, about 4. About 4 of the courses. And I think, and I would do it all over again. I know my money went there and everything. But I think the point is there's another path. We see a lot of individuals go through, they get that much learning, they go and actually deploy it in a corporate setting or a market setting. They stabilize their families, they get on track. A lot of them buy their first homes, things like that. And then they go back and start taking college courses at night and doing other things. The big proof is in the pudding, and like I said, we survey our folks every year. About half of the folks that have gone through our program have a 4-year degree, and about half do not. If you look at their current income data, there is no difference between how much money they're making after they've gone through our program between whether they had a 4-year degree or not, which to me was mind-boggling. The other key statistic is only 25% of them had a technology job prior to joining our program, so 75% did not. And actually, if you look at their income, the individuals who didn't are actually making slightly more, the individuals who didn't. So for all those organizations out there who are saying we have to have a 4-year degree, we have to have prior experience, I would say they're at a disadvantage. If they don't start thinking differently, they're not going to be able to hire the talent that they're going to need to compete in a 21st century kind of environment.
Mm-hmm. Certainly. So let's zoom out a little bit on future of work, and I have to go back to my twin trends of disruptive technologies and longevity. And I will have Elizabeth talk a little bit about education systems. And when we think about the twin trends of how the rapid acceleration of technology changing the workplace, tied to people wanting and needing to continue to work. 3, 4, 5 generations in the workforce. People moving away from a 3-stage life of investing in their education, spending their work years, and then arriving at retirement to more of a non-linear multi-stage. The combination of that longevity and that rapid acceleration of automation sort of pushes us to a whole new level when it comes to lifelong learning and skill building and skill refreshes. So, Elizabeth, what's your take on alternative education models, and is the 4-year degree necessary? Does the 4-year degree work in this new normal?
Yeah. Well, we're still requiring it, right? Like, we're still making it work, but it doesn't necessarily make sense anymore. If you think about where you are even 5 years out of college, you have a resume. Your resume is a piece of paper that reflects your degree. You know how well you did in school. You might know what you did in your first couple of jobs, but you're rapidly becoming a collection of skills. So every person in this room over the course of life experiences that could range from being a summer camp counselor to leading an organization has picked up skills that ultimately teach you how to be an effective employee, how to do particular technical skills if that's something that you've done across roles. And ultimately what we're trying to do with a resume or with a 4-year degree is just understand and kind of de-risk your ability to deliver on the job. So that's what we use 4-year degrees, that's what we use certifications for today, is just to understand risk. But if we start to think about the world and start to think about individuals as collections of skills, collections of experiences, and frankly, as we get better and better at understanding people that way and measuring aptitude, finding a great fit for an individual in a role based on skills instead of necessarily the paper resume, that's when you start to unlock real potential. One interesting story I've heard is a company, advanced manufacturing company in Colorado, thinking about how to hire for jobs that required very precision, ultimately like precision line work, and trying to find that off of someone's resume, trying to find the major that translates directly into that was tough. Ultimately, one of the best sources that they found locally was sushi chefs. If you think about what it does it take to be a sushi chef, you are using fine precision in line work day in and day out, your quality control, all of the things that then ultimately translated well to that manufacturing environment were present in a role that you would never really think of. So how do we bridge that gap between understanding the paper experience from the resume, from the 4-year degree, to what you can do on a job? Your aptitude is a jump, but I think that that's the challenge that we're facing today as we overcome a talent shortage that is driven by 4-year degrees. I'll add too that I think that when, especially in government, when we think about de-risking delivery through work experience, we want to see resumes of people who could contribute to a project that have a certain education level. We want to see X years of work experience. At that point, you're driving up cost. You are ultimately creating a world where you're narrowing the pool of people who could deliver to attributes that don't necessarily de-risk it. My graduation from a 4-year degree institution demonstrates that I was a good student, that I could complete, education requirements, I could track to a syllabus, et cetera, but it doesn't necessarily convey any other details about my qualifications.
Absolutely fascinating. So in terms of the NS2 Serves program, where do you see alternative education models playing a role, and do you have some lessons from your work?
Oh, sure. So just to talk, and John, I kind of wish we had met. I'm about to graduate my 3rd child from college, and I wish I met Catalyte before that. I would have saved some money here, but I do think, in talking about this 4-year college degree, the student loan debt nowadays is just astronomical. And again, my day job working in HR, it's not that we're not going to look at 4-year college degrees, but we really do need to understand, that, hey, there are other skill sets out there. And again, I will vouch for our veterans is that, they have just so many great skill sets that they're out there doing, so many different things on the battlefield, and they can, think off their feet. And what a great attribute that would be for any company within that. So again, I think with this 4-year college degree, we do need to move a little bit away from that and start thinking about how we're going to reskill. I know we as a company at SAP NS2, we're looking at how do we reskill our workforce and how are we going to do that. And I think part of that is, and when you think about a veteran and when you reskill them, they know how to do teamwork, they know how to collaborate. And in some of these technological jobs, you have a lot of technical folks coming in thinking, I know how to do this and I'm the smartest one here. But we really need to think about how we're going to reskill that workforce to say, you need to collaborate with others, you need to work well together, and then we can, start the whole reskilling part. So I think that's really important.
At AARP, we often talk about those soft skills, or we like to call them uniquely human skills, and we like to say you can't microwave them. So the new entries need help from that experienced workforce to better understand some of those critical thinking and those creativity and collaboration and coordination types of skill sets that are so unique. But Chris, at Deloitte, you've hired some of these candidates, and tell us a little bit about your experience in terms of alternative education models and the four-year degree in your work setting and how that works in terms of addressing your HR criteria.
So one of the things, so when we first got exposed to the NS2 program, I most definitely wish that this was available when I got out of the military. So I'm a veteran. I was in the Marine Corps. I was a tow gunner, which is a heavy anti-tank missile that you fire off the back of Humvees. As you look at the marketplace, there aren't that many jobs that are going to translate directly into that. So at the time, I had to go through that four-year program in order to get to the translation. But as we're looking at it with what is going on in the marketplace today in the battle for talent, as I like to refer to it, looking at the skill sets that many of these folks bring, it's interesting and enlightening to see how they integrate with folks who maybe have gone through that four-year program. We find that quite often they have a much higher tolerance of ambiguity, potentially change, and also stress levels. Not every customer is the nicest, kindest person out there. And so stress levels can dramatically ramp up, and what we find is that veterans do a phenomenal job in being able to help our four-year degree program people better understand the realities of what the marketplace is and how to be able to handle that stress effectively. So that's one of the most powerful things that they bring to the table, on top of all the technological knowledge that they have. And maybe just one more point is because of what NS2 is doing, where the veterans are not having to pay for this education program that they go through, many of them, after they've come to Deloitte and other places as well, are taking those opportunities to potentially pursue that as an additive factor into their education longer term. But we see this across a multitude of different skill sets, especially in the digital marketplace today. You're finding more and more niche skill sets which are critical to success, not necessarily having been something that went through a four-year program. And so people that are passionate about it are generally working much more effectively than people that may say, well, we got this project, hey, you get assigned, you're going to go do this.
Mm-hmm. Great. So Tom, tell us about some of the attributes of the Catalyte trained candidates and what they bring to the business community and some of the business outcomes you can point to.
So part of rethinking, if you're not taking a traditional education approach, you have to kind of rethink what you're trying to generate as an outcome. And our model actually starts with the desired success of a given role. So we don't say, oh, this role should have these things. We actually go to the consumer of the role and say, what does success look like? And then we actually break down the success. And Ramsey, this I think goes to your uniquely human attributes. We found, so for example, for software developers, we have 4 sets of abilities that are key to generate a successful or high-performing software developer. Only one of the 4 sets has anything to do with writing quality code, which is really interesting, and it was a little bit surprising, but we kind of looked at what do successful software developers do, how do they behave, what abilities they have, and so certainly being able to write quality code that passes code review is a criteria, and on time and within commitments. But then all of a sudden we start seeing a lot of characteristics around teamwork. This is something that this audience probably knows better than I do. The impact and the benefit associated with teamwork, team mentality, and the ability to work effectively as part of a team. So there's a whole set of abilities. And you think about that, you send someone off to the 4-year university and pay lots of money for it, how much are they actually spending on those kind of characteristics and rewarding and reinforcing those? The third one had to do with how well an individual was ever able to interact with their stakeholder, the person that is really needing that individual to produce some result. Do they communicate with them effectively? Can they give them feedback effectively so that they hear it? Can they answer questions effectively? Do they really understand what's trying to be accomplished, the mission? And then ultimately, the fourth one, again, was interesting, was are you taking care of your own skill sets? And this goes to the lifelong learner versus the dump 4 years worth of knowledge in you at the beginning of your career and then you're good for 30 years. One of the most critical abilities was, are you proactively owning your skill repository as it relates to your work and your career, and do you pay attention and tend to that? And I think it's a really interesting look into the difference between kind of our old view of let's make sure that they know syntax around a coding language and can produce certain canned types of projects versus individuals who can work well with each other, understand the value, understand where they are and where they need to improve, and be able to put all that together to produce a result. And that's why our program, frankly, has been able to be successful. It's because we really focus on those outcomes that drive value, and we don't spend time on other things.
What an important framework. And Laura, I have a hunch that some of these attributes shared are similar with your candidates. Can you share with us some of the attributes of veterans that make them the ideal candidate?
Sure. So, again, when you're hiring a veteran, they come out of such a structured environment that they actually bring some of that discipline into the workforce. And I think they really help some of the other, team members know how to, collaborate and work as a team. They can be counted on in tough situations. I think, Chris, what you're talking about, the stress level, that a lot of employees entail. And the veterans look at you and go, you think that was stress? Try being on the battlefield, being shot at, and trying to do communication, things like that. So I think that's a really important point, that they bring down the stress level of others. And again, when you hire them, and I remember when I first worked with Chris Dinkel in Deloitte, and he talked about the early talent that he brought on. And he talked about, we train them, and then they go on to other companies. Well, when you hire the veterans, they want to stay with that company. They're dedicated. They're loyal. They see it as a mission, and they want to grow within the company. And so when you hire one of these vets, they are for a long term. So I think it's just, all these different attributes make for a great hire.
Fantastic. So just to give the audience a heads up, we'll turn to audience questions in just a moment. So feel free to go ahead and use any of the standing mics or put your questions on index cards and put them up so they're captured. But first, Chris, you've hired several of these, your firm's hired several of the NS2 individuals. And so can you talk about the benefits of the partnership and the impact to your business from working together?
Certainly. So we had originally, when we embarked on this path, the SAP marketplace is essentially going gangbusters with customers needing to re-implement, for all intents and purposes, in the new S4 HANA paradigm. And it's a major technological shift. It is not an upgrade as it used to be. It's a complete, essentially, re-implementation. And so the pressure was on, because we've been doing a lot of this work so early when the product became available, the pressure was on to get more and more bodies. And we were already starting to recognize that we needed quality people to be able to put in front of our customers. So the timing of the NS2 program starting up was monumental for us because it gave us a way to be able to source alternatively to how we get people that we bring in that can provide work and quality service to our customers. There are some other models that we've done around that, and so we were following on that path. But Mark and Laura have been phenomenal working with us, and we help shape the curriculum as for each of the classes as they go through. And so that has led to more and more success around the respective veterans. It's also started to allow us to look beyond SAP. So our folks, for example, in this class, the folks in Deloitte Tax, which is a totally tax-centric side of our business, as well as our folks in advisory, especially around cybersecurity, are starting to take a look at these folks and leverage them in an alternate model to be able to help deliver work to clients.
Great. Well, thank you. So if anyone has a question from the audience, if you could just go ahead and identify yourself and share your questions. There's a mic right there. Looks like there's one over there. And if you're busy eating, I have backup questions, but please.
Hi, David Winks with AccuSite. When we think about hiring veterans, it's been said that it's easier to teach skills than values. And certainly Edward Snowden had skills, not values. Could you speak to the values that are developed in our veterans and how that is of benefit to potential employers?
You want to talk about that, Chris?
You want
Some of
to
the values?
Laura, do you want to
No,
start?
there you go.
Okay. Yeah, sure. So, I mean, the way that we look at it, so those values that they bring across. So, one of the first ones is a highly defined, I would say, work ethic. Coming from military service, they understand the importance of every role in the success of whatever the respective mission might be. Not all consulting jobs are glamorous. So people have to work in different types of roles, and we find that veterans are much more willing and are much harder workers in some of those roles that might not be as much fun, but the result is that they end up moving faster forward in their career because they take that on, they conquer that challenge and move through. Loyalty, as Laura talked about, we see that. We don't see a tremendous turnover in our veteran population, which is one thing that we're continuing to look at Deloitte, because we do see, in this generation of millennials, we see quite often folks as they graduate from college are looking at getting something on their resume, some sort of consultative experience to then move their career forward. And that means that they're probably around for 2 years, 4 years, something like that, and then they move on. The other thing I would say that's probably extremely critical is teamwork. And he was talking about it a little bit earlier, but the teamwork aspect that a veteran brings to the program is very different from what we get out of traditional four-year college graduates, because most often they're working or focused on their respective curriculum for their respective degree. They might have some team activities that are occurring inside of certain classes, but for the most part, it's really about them. It's a hyper focus on them. Whereas veterans, through their experiences, whatever that military mission might be, are spending a significant amount of time focusing on how do we together accomplish what the overall goal is. And so the teamwork aspect of it is another critical thing that they bring that is a significant differentiator.
Yep, and just to add to that, Chris, I think what they're doing at Deloitte is they're putting them in a delivery center. And when you put veterans, again, just like in our training, when you put 20 veterans in a room to learn something, they're all going to be successful. They're all going to make sure. And when they're working in these delivery centers, they also feel comfortable. They're working amongst their peers, veterans. They're not afraid to ask questions. You know, some of our issues within the workforce nowadays are people are afraid to ask questions. They think they always have to be right. And I think the veterans are a great example of, you know, they want to learn and they're going to ask the questions. They're not afraid to do that. And especially when they're working together at a delivery center, I think it's become really successful. I think if you put an individual veteran by themselves where they don't have that comfort zone, they don't have their teams to rely on, you know, they're not as successful. So, you know, I think of when you hire these vets, putting them in a team environment is where they're most successful.
Great, great question. And please. Is the mic on? Let's see.
Hello? Oh, okay.
Great.
I'm Michael Treckham with the Department of State. I remember reading Dana Priest's article with then, in 2010, Secretary of Defense Bob Gates. And one thing Secretary Gates said back then was he was talking about, in terms of jobs that the Department of Defense was doing at their career personnel versus contractors. Quote, he says, in terms of insourcing, putting career people in, we find that a career person, roughly speaking, a career person is about 25, well, I don't want to go into that, but one of the things I will say here is that he realized he made the distinction and the need for career personnel. And I guess my question is especially with all the new technologies and our changing world and the landscape, is Congress and OMB, OPM, intelligently, adequately committing funding and acquisitions, or recruiting, retaining staff in terms of training in-house career personnel in being well-versed in the technologies to achieve their missions? And the other thing, I don't know about the Department of Defense, but I know in my organization, there is a very long lag and a lot of heartburn whenever we upgrade just versions in Microsoft Windows. Right now, we're on 0365, and there's a lot of consternation. I think that's a challenge we all face throughout the federal government. And I'm wondering, how do we make sure everyone from the 30-year of service veteran to the college graduate to even the high school graduate who are new to the organization, how do we get everybody on the same page and still be on the cutting edge of technology? Thank you.
Thank you. So Elizabeth, I'll give you a chance to take a stab at that, but I want to draw that insight out that it's a universal challenge. Defense, intelligence, technology is grappling with this, but really this acceleration of disruptive technologies has implications for public sector, private sector, NGOs, and individuals' responsibilities to make the digitization transformation. And I don't know that anyone has really addressed that head on yet. But what are your thoughts in particular?
I completely agree, especially on the first part of the question. In government, across government, we want to hire people who want to change the world. But we are asking the world to change, and in fact, the world to stop and slow down while we get them through a clearance process, while we vet their backgrounds. The way that we are hiring, and then in particular, the trends y'all are talking about around individuals coming early in their careers, wanting more mobility, more experience, shorter stints and roles. We used to hire people and invest all of that time up front into understanding your risk profile to government, making sure that you're a good fit for the organization with the expectation that you're going to be part of our organization for 30 years, 40 years. But when that calculus changes to 2 years or 5 years, the processes that we have in place don't work anymore. I think even on the front end of that talent pipeline, on the digitization and automation front, Ramsey, you mentioned earlier the displacement of mid-career workers. Another thing that I think is interesting in McKinsey's research on automation and the future of work is the first wave of automation, whether it's back-end business processes, things like that, what you might see and feel in the next 5 years could disproportionately impact mid-career individuals. But if you think more on the 10 to 15 years out, what we're going to be getting rid of or certainly consolidating are all of our first jobs. Think about disruption and automation when it comes to retail, when it comes to food service, administrative functions, the jobs that taught you how to show up on time, that taught you how to understand workforce behavior. So at that scale, our talent development challenge across organizations doesn't just become, how do I assess this person's fit for my organization? It might become something more like, how do I teach this person how to have a job? And that's not something that I think we have done before.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, thank you. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but I think it's been a fabulous panel conversation. I think what our panel has illustrated is that the pace of technology is light speed. The change you're experiencing now is the slowest. From here on out, it will be even faster. And this rapid acceleration of disruptive technology is a game changer. And proactive, innovative solutions to look at the issues from a new framework, from a new paradigm are essential. So thanks so much to our great panelists. Let's give them a round of applause and thank them.